And hello, everybody. This is Chris A. Moody, and I am today talking to you from Dog Days of Podcasting 2016 with the one and only Terry Mixon from Dead Robot Society. How are you doing tonight, Terry?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. For the few people who may not know what Dead Robot Society is, what is it, and how did you get involved?
The Dead Robot Society is a writing podcast for aspiring writers, and I got involved with it by opening my big mouth and commenting and being invited onto the show as a guest. And then somehow I wormed my way inside and everyone else left, and here I am. Except for Paul. Paul's still here.
Okay. But technically, he's now back to being the new guy, so he has the eject seat, right?
I wasn't going to tell him that. Now you've let the secret out of the bag.
And just by coincidence, you guys technically live in the same city now. Or, well, you have for a while, but...
Same metro area. Sure, I'll agree with that. Driving to his house, though, that's a long trip from where I live.
True. I've been down, well, going by bus anyways, even getting down from where I live probably about more than, well, I live somewhere between you two and now, and getting down to where, getting down to NASA is a long bus ride from where I am.
I bet it is.
So how long ago did you actually decide to pick up the electronic pen and start writing?
It has to be 6 or 7 years ago. And I guess what got me started in doing it is a longtime friend sent me his science fiction novel that he had written. And I'd been doing the thing where you buy writing books and you think about writing, but you don't actually write. And that got me off my butt and got me started writing. But I've gotten much better since then, thank God.
Okay. And so the first things that you wrote, they were more like online only postings, or?
They were online only postings under a pseudonym, and they were erotic mysteries. So a combination of erotica with murder mysteries involved. They were pretty well received in the audience that they were sent to, and so I certainly can't complain.
All right. And yeah, I remember at one point when you still were working for the four-letter conglomerate, your writing was making about was roughly making what I made in a whole month, and you were getting that every month for just writing. And that's what got me started thinking, well, if he can do it.
That's what everyone should be thinking, because if I can do it, by God, anyone can do it.
But so are you still in the back of the DVD warehouse story writing, or have you changed perspectives of what you're writing now?
About 2 years ago, I moved to writing science fiction because of some instability inside the erotica market. And I haven't wrote any new erotica in easily, I guess, almost 2.5 years.
Okay.
So now it's all science fiction, space opera, adventure.
Okay. So for those who may not know, if you were going to give one of your characters a love interest, where would a love scene stop before going over that line between just a love scene and an erotica scene? Or is there a difference?
Well, sure, there's a difference. For example, in the science fiction that I'm writing, when it gets to the point to where, well, clothes might start coming off, the door gets closed, because that's not really what I see as part of the science fiction that I'm writing. So I keep a pretty firm lid on that. Not much more than kissing before a scene switches there. But in erotica, the sky is the limit. You can go as far as you like, and actually for erotica, that's pretty much how you succeed, by going as far as you possibly can.
Okay. Even if it breaks what's humanly possible, right?
Well, of course you got to keep in the humanly possible. I mean, as far as you don't limit yourself to boundaries of what you're willing to show the reader.
Okay. So, you first started doing Empire of Bones, and that did pretty well for you, right?
Yeah, it's done very well, especially over the long haul.
Okay. Do you think being on a popular podcast was its initial big boost because people knew you, or
I think that it might have been, because that the first couple of days of the release on that, if I remember right, it sold 200 copies, enough to make it visible in the hot new releases. And I didn't have a mailing list at that time, so I think that having an audience on social media that was interested in it actually did help get it where it needed to be.
okay? And so now, if I remember correctly, you've now that you've released a couple of these episodes, you told the four-letter uh, organization you used to work with that you were now going to do it solo.
I think it was the other way around. They decided to lay me off, and so I was thrown into the full-time writing gig, whether I liked it or not.
Okay. Well, I knew that's the way it really was, but I was trying to boost you up there more.
Nah, maybe if I was getting close to the point that I am now while I was working for them, I'd sure be thinking about telling them to go take a hike.
Okay. So, and for those who don't know, you used to work for NASA.
I was a contractor at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, yes.
And with your experience there, does that affect your writing much, or would you say being a fan of Star Trek, Star Wars, whatever, affects your writing more?
Being a voracious reader of science fiction, it probably affects more than working at NASA. It gives me having worked there for almost 20 years. I do have ideas of things that I can incorporate, but it's not as big as one might think.
Okay.
It's more of a mindset, really, that you pull out of working at a place like that.
Okay. Although I would assume you would, if you decided you wanted to write something like like uh, brain is blanking out right
Martian?
now. Yeah, The Martian. You probably have the contacts to have written as good of a novel as he did, right?
I probably do know enough people to have gotten the information that I needed, yes.
Okay.
Well, that's a very excellent book. If you haven't read it, people, you should. The book is much better than the movie, and the movie's awesome.
Yeah. I've yet to read the book, but I did definitely like the movie. So how did I know every author kind of hates this question, but how did you come up with the scenario for Empire of Bones?
I'm a seat of the pants writer, so the details come on the fly. I more often come up with ideas of unique characters and then try to figure out how I want to get them started in a story. And then the story becomes clear to me as I'm going along, usually pretty quickly, the big things. And so that's pretty much how I do it. I kind of do it backwards, I guess, from just about everybody else.
Okay. And since this is a space opera, how do you know when? Do you already have in mind how far you go at the end of a book, or do you just say, "Oh well, I hit my word count, so the book's done"? Or
It has to be a major climax in the story that I'm telling. It has to solve or fail to solve some major issue that the characters are pursuing for that novel. It's definitely, there are some overarching themes and longer plot threads, but a novel isn't just word count, it's a story arc. You've got to go ahead and have some major plot point that you start from beginning through the middle to the end, one way or the other, to make a novel.
okay. So do you have, for those who are interested in um, being an author, do you have, would you recommend any books, or do you, now that you're actually doing it, do you think just writing is best, or?
Oh, no. Reading books is certainly something that is very useful. It's very helpful. You should always try to be learning something new because as soon as you start thinking that you know it all, you're on the downslide, buddy. You gotta keep learning, keep moving, and keep improving yourself, or you're gonna fall into a trap that you don't want to be in. I'm not going to go ahead and recommend any specific book. Just look for things, subjects of interest. There are a wide variety of writing books out there that you can find. That just find one that speaks to you and start there. And as you're curious about other things, you can find other things. And on the flip side, like you say, you've got to write because this may be a dirty word for a lot of writers, but you got to practice because if you don't do it, then you don't grow as a writer. This is not something where you write something and it's set in stone. It's as good as it's ever going to get. You become a better storyteller as you tell stories. As you write a novel and you look at it and you say, I could have done this better, or this thing could have been improved. There's always some aspect of it, not just talking mechanics, but storytelling that you can find to improve. And you can even have a cat that walks across the screen.
Yep. Well, gotta have those cats there.
That's right. Yelling cat press. That's what you get.
So, are there any cats in your books?
Not yet, but there will be.
Okay. So, how many books is the Empire of Bones saga now?
5 books.
Okay. And they're still going strong, no end in sight, or?
No end in sight. I have a big picture end in mind, but it's so far out that I'm not even close to starting to think about where that is, because I've made the setting so vast and the obstacles so large that they're going to have to overcome, that there are any number of books between me and that end, which is the way I like it. I like big settings because it gives me a lot of room to veer off when I see a squirrel.
Right. Okay. So when you started, or when you finished Empire of Bones and you put it out to being published, did you immediately start with book 2, or did you wait to see how book 1 was received before you started?
Actually, with that series, those first couple of books, I was actually most of the way done writing book 2 by the time I published book 1. That's not the case anymore. I've gotten better at the publishing process. And so now usually I'm only partway into another book by the time I publish something. But I actually had, I think, the first draft virtually completed by the time I published the first one.
Okay. And so if in book 3 you, for whatever reason, decide that someone had to have blue eyes instead of green eyes, do you retrofit it that back to the previous books, or?
I have been known to do that. I usually very minor things, like I can come off the top of my head and think of, I published a book and had a character's rank as I think I named them a major. And when I was writing the next book, I said, I need to do this differently. And so I went back and I changed it. Nobody's commented about it, so either they didn't catch on or something else, but I don't change a lot of things, just little details that may suit. I'm not averse to changing them.
Okay. And I guess one of the important things with doing this kind of stuff is you can't have too much stuff happening that the audience doesn't know, right? Like you couldn't give someone a promotion and say it happened between books.
I could do that, but it's much more impactful if I make it happen in character. So I'd want to do things like that as it's happening. And actually, in this case, it was a demotion. I bumped them down from major to captain. because it suited where I wanted to be. Because you can only have one captain on a spaceship, so why would the Marines in the future even have the rank of captain? Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe I bumped it from captain to major. I decided to eliminate the confusing rank. They run into that problem in today's modern military, but I said, I think I can fix that. So I did.
Okay. Yeah, that could be kind of difficult, especially if you decided to do something where the spaceship was lost. You have a limit to how high you have a glass ceiling of how high you can go because there can only be one captain. And likely the captain can't promote themselves.
Unless you've got a handy princess along.
That's true. I guess that was a mistake they made in Voyager. They didn't give them a princess to bring along.
There you go.
So when after you finished, like, I guess it was the third book, you started a second series, is that correct?
I think that's correct.
Okay. And why did you decide to start the second series?
I blame Scott Roche for this. We were talking about something that has evolved to the name of libertarian wank fiction. And basically that's, I hesitate to say that it's more conservative leaning, but it's definitely got some conservative themes that come in there in some of these stories. Folks like John Ringo write what I would call libertarian wank fiction. It's all about freedom of the individual and oppressive government and that sort of thing. And while those themes aren't big in what I was writing, the conversation that I was having with Scott sparked this idea of writing this book. So I went ahead and did it.
Okay. And then, of course, someone named Paul kind of spurred you on too, I think.
He did. He's a troublemaker that way.
So, and if I remember correctly, you were saying that all you had to do was look at what was currently going on in the political world, and that gave you kind of fodder to throw into the book.
Yeah, and that doesn't even count what's going on in this current election cycle. I wrote Liberty Station before they even had all the people start coming forward for this particular election, because I'd have been scared to write something like what's going on right now, because that's too outlandish. Nobody'd believe it.
So no galactic wall yet?
No galactic wall. Maybe I'll put that in the next book.
Of course, it could be just a galactic force shield or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So would you normally recommend for people to be running multiple series, or?
I don't know that I would recommend it, but if you want to do that, I certainly wouldn't deter you from doing so. You've got to decide what's right for you as a writer. Some people can be happy telling story after story in the same universe, and there are plenty of authors that do that. And there are others that have different series that they jump around. I just like to have options. After a couple of books of writing, I think I wrote the three, like you said, the 3 Empire books all in one series, and I was tired of the characters. I wanted to change pace. And so writing this new book gave me fresh creative energy. So when I came back to the Empire series after it was done, it was fresh and new to me. And that's always something that's worthwhile.
Okay. I do see in Facebook we did get one question here from Dave Wright. He wants to know, which of the 3 Stooges do you think you are?
Oh, gosh. I think I might be Mo.
Okay. And what's Donna's opinion?
I think she may think I'm Curly.
Okay. Too bad she's not in the background. Okay. And Paul Cooley also liked my announcement, but he didn't list any questions. So recently, the Dead Robot Society decided to do some massive changes. You guys got rid of the founder, and then you got rid of the third seat, and so it's now just a duo.
You make it sound so ominous. We didn't
Well,
actually get rid of Justin. Justin decided that he had other things that he wanted to be doing, so I can't take credit for that. And as for Scott leaving, that was a hard decision, and it involved a lot of conversations to make sure that we were making the right choice for the show, because that's really what's important.
right.
We miss you, Scott.
So the big question is, are you going to get rid of the apostrophe?
It's a tough call. Tough call. I'm not. Who can change tradition? This show's been around for 8-9 years now. Yeah, I think it's pretty well stuck.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking of all those graphics you'd have to get republished just to take out the, just to get rid of the apostrophe. Even if it wouldn't make more English sense that way.
If we're going to get rid of the apostrophe, we just change the entire name. God only knows what we'd change it to.
2 Texas authors.
Writing in the Lone Star State.
Okay. So what's so now you're also getting ready to start a third series? Is that correct?
It is. I was approached by J. Daniel Sawyer. I can learn to speak English clearly one of these days, about participating in a story bundle that he's putting together that revolves around extreme sports and science fiction. And the idea was really interesting. I wasn't sure how I was going to approach that, but I think I've pretty well nailed the story the way that I wanted to tell it. And anybody that's read any of my other work will say, like the beta readers did, it's a completely different subject, but it sounds like you. So I'm happy with that.
That's cool. Were you at all tempted to give them Dino Riders?
That wasn't me. That's Paul.
I know.
I could steal Paul's book and say, yeah, here you go. I think Scott Sigler would complain, though, since he actually paid to have that created. He might be annoyed.
Yeah. But see, if it goes, you have the rights to do a series that might actually go somewhere. It might actually get published.
Could happen one of these days. Who knows what's holding Scott up?
Yeah, actually, he did talk about it. He has talked about it a few times on his podcast, but was that something you had as a requirement when you were talking to? Sorry, brain was just going blank all over the place today. J. Daniel Smith, that you would be able to write your own series based off of the book, or?
It's J. Daniel Sawyer, and I didn't have a requirement about it being a series. As long as the book met the criteria of dealing in some aspect with having extreme sports of some kind as a major plot element, then it would be acceptable for the story bundle. And that's really that's the only part of it that I had to make sure was an integral part. The rest of the story, I was free to figure out how I wanted to tell it. And it took me damn well long enough to figure out what I wanted to do, but I think I got it settled.
Okay. Although, since you can't copyright an idea, you could still have made it Dino Riders if you wanted to, right?
Sure, I could have, but that's not really my bag. That's more Sigler's bag.
Right. So, when is that one expected to be released?
I believe that the story bundle is going to come out early to mid-September, and it's going to run 3 weeks. And I could publish the book tomorrow if I wanted to, as long as while the story bundle is going on, it's priced no more than 99 cents. But I've decided to go ahead and wait till the story bundle is complete and then publish it on Amazon myself.
Okay.
So October-ish, it should be out.
Okay. So then that means in November the second book will be out?
I'm already writing the next book in the Humanity Unlimited saga, so the third book for after Liberty Station is what's currently on my plate.
Okay. And so you're just going to be rotating through the 3 series, one book at a time, or?
For right now, that's what I have in mind. I've got a kind of spin-off novel in mind. I hesitate to call it a prequel novel to The Empire of Bones, but it's called Imperial Marines, and it would be set before the Great Fall that took place 500 years before Empire of Bones, so a galactic civilization at its height. It'll all tie together somehow, but I've already got the first chapter of it written. I've had that damn first chapter written for over a year, but other projects keep getting in the way. It's going to come up before I get back to the other things, I suspect.
Okay. So are you following Ziegler's lead in which all of your books take place in a universe, or are they separate universes?
Separate universes, definitely.
Okay. All right. And so where can people find you?
They can find me at terrymixon.com, which is a very bare bones site, but better off, you can find my books at Amazon. I'm the only Terry Mixon there. And you can find me on Facebook at the Listeners of the Dead Robot Society Facebook page.
Okay. And then they can also find you at deadrobots.com.
Yep. They can find the podcast there, and I lurk along with it.
Okay. Well, of course, without you, it would just be Paul, and I'm not really sure. Paul has his own podcast, so I don't know if he could come up with 2 podcasts worth of material every week.
I don't know what he'd do if I wasn't there to harass him.
Yeah. And then, of course, there'd be no one that ever reply to what do you get if a word is an antonym and a synonym at the same time?
I was envisioning matter and antimatter, like he said, exploding and no words left.
All right. Well, definitely. Well, let's see. Actually, okay. Yep. I guess that is everything. Anything else you would like to mention before we go?
I would like to mention maybe going out to audible.com and checking out the audiobooks that are there, because they're voiced by the talented Veronica Jaguar, and you're missing something if you're not hearing them.
Okay. Well, do you think you'll ever have a male read any of your books?
Perhaps. We'll see. Veronica's a busy lady. I write a lot of books. Who knows what will happen in the future? But I'm happy with the way things are right now. We'll come to that bridge when we get there.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for being on my podcast for Dog Days of Podcasting, and have a great evening.
Thank you very much for inviting me.